Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome. This is the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Your host, Joey, the Italian Stallion Murray, joined as always by Russ, the idea guy Morgan. So Russ, you normally have the ideas. This time it was my wife. She had this awesome idea. As you know, we homeschool. She says, Joey, I think I know what we're going to study for science this year.
Yeah.
And we're going to study the home building process.
Nice.
Well, you know, normally if you're just listening to this, you don't know that we just sold our house and we are going to be building a house. So what better time to study it than when you're in the middle of the process? You can go physically put your hands on the plumbing, the concrete, the drywall, whatever it might be, whatever process that they're in, and learn that firsthand. Like, I thought that was a brilliant idea.
I think it's an awesome idea. And the fact that she came up with it and not you, it's not shocking to me at all.
I was about to say that is not shocking at all. However, this is kind of what it's like in where you and I are at this stage, and where many of you are listening, saying, how can I instill certain things in my kids that maybe I wasn't even subjected to? I mean, to be honest with you, I'm like the worst with my hands. I don't know how houses are put together. I don't understand how that works. It was never taught to me. Well, you may be thinking the same thing as it relates to finances. How can I pass along something that I have never really mastered? I don't really understand how money works and things like that. And today's guest actually is very inspiring.
It's super inspiring. I mean, you're going to get to hear from Marco Santarelli and his amazing story of starting at like age 14, learning about stuff to where at age 18, he bought his first house, Joey.
That's crazy. I mean, at 18, I was trying to figure out which dorm room I was going to pick out maybe, but not like even the prospect of owning a piece of real estate.
Man, I got turned down for a Sears credit to try to buy a big screen TV when I was like 21. I mean, I was trying to buy an $800 TV. I had not bad credit. I had no credit. How in the world do you get credit at 18 to be able to buy a townhome? But that's just the kind of motivation and passion that he has. You're going to get to hear that in this episode. And your kids are learning from the actual science. The science is the study of the knowledge, right? So, you know, one of those things, they're going to get to see home building firsthand. They're going to see as it's going. I think that's going to be a great subject. My wife's got me teaching economics this year to our 14-year-old. And this, like, learning and studying to be an entrepreneur, whether you're 14 or you're 44 or 64, there's never a bad time.
That's right. You got to get started. And that's what I took away from our interview with him, is that it's a process. He's learning things now that he didn't learn when he was 18, but he's been learning this whole time. Yeah. And that's what we can take away, that there's always time to learn. And that's why we created the community, right? Community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. If you go there, you're going to be able to sign up to be around other like-minded people who are on this journey. They're learning. You'll get access to guys like Marco Santarelli to ask him questions and answers about the things that you have in mind. What did he say in the podcast that we failed to ask? And all those things in between.
Well, and Marco has built an amazing company, Norada Real Estate. You definitely want to go check out a lot of his stuff. He's got a podcast himself. I just think that this episode was just a great kind of reminder to me of how valuable it is for us to be consummate learners, that we can't start early enough. And you're going to want to hear all the different details that he shares with us. So let's jump into this interview with Marco Santarelli.
Have you been listening to our podcast and wondering, am I the only person that knows about infinite banking? Or what about the 5 pillars of Wealth Without Wall Street? How can I learn more? Now is your chance. You can join the community that is learning this across the country.
Go to community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com, where you can access Q&As with all our podcast guests and live group coaching with some of the top experts from across the nation. And yes, I'm throwing in the Stallion and I in that. Community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. Sign up.
Welcome into the show, Marco Santarelli. Man, so glad to have you in here.
My pleasure. I'm glad I'm on the show. I'm excited to talk to your audience and share some great information. And you guys are hilarious. So I'm looking forward to this episode.
Well, don't set the bar too high. I mean, in case somebody's listening to this for the first time, they're like, let's play this out a little bit longer and figure it out. But I like the encouragement. So, right. Marco, I'm really interested in your backstory. As I was reading a little bit about you, it said that you started investing in real estate at 18.
Yes, sir. That's correct. So I just knew from a very young age that I wanted to be what I thought at the time rich, but really what I wanted to be was wealthy. And so at an early age, around 14, 15, I started ordering courses from Tony Robbins, stuff on real estate, stuff on how to start a business. And I was just educating myself.
Did you say 14?
Yeah, 14.
Wow.
Yeah, I was ordering stuff like that too. Like
you ordered like Subway sandwiches,
baseball cards or something like.
All right, so
that's crazy.
You're reading Tony Robbins at 14 and wanting to be wealthy. Wow. All right, keep going.
Yeah, and I still have that Tony Robbins program. It was his original Personal Power on cassette tape, and I still have it to this day. So
nice.
I don't know what it was. Call me a nerd or a geek, but the thing is just I knew I wanted. It wasn't about the money. I couldn't quantify it at the time, but it was really about having time freedom. I wanted to be free. I didn't want to work a 9-to-5 job like everybody I knew. And so, look, anybody who's 14 or 15 is smart enough to see that they either choose a career, they get a job, or if they look around, they can see where the wealth comes from. And it's usually from a business owner or someone who owns a lot of assets like real estate. And I noticed that at that age. But regardless, not to go too deep into my story, I went down this path at the time of wanting to be a business owner / investor. So when I turned 18, I could qualify for financing. I bought an end unit townhome. I fixed it up with the help of my uncle, who was a carpenter. So I was able to, quote unquote, hire him, and I did pay him, but he gave me a deal. Right. Fixed it up, leased it out, and managed it. And it was pretty much a textbook transaction. There was no internet back then. It was sticking a sign on the lawn and paper applications. That's really how it was done. But it was a great deal, and it was a good transaction. And the biggest mistake I made in that deal is actually selling that property years later. Yes, I took out a big chunk of equity. It was a great thing, but I was stupid in the sense that I wasted that money probably on consumer items. I didn't reinvest it. And knowing what I know today, I would have been much wealthier today if I knew what I knew today back then.
So let me ask you this, Marco. You brought up your uncle who helps you with the actual repairs on that. Did you have other family influence that got you in and around that real estate world, or was it just totally on your own?
It was mostly on my own. My father was he's an awesome person, but very, very, very conservative. He just was the regular 9-to-5, work one job until you retire, and that's exactly what he did. He was a machinist. So I wasn't born in a wealthy family. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. My parents both worked, sometimes 2 jobs. We did struggle. We had very modest beginnings. But again, it was really more about being observant. And today with the internet, people listening to the show, even at a young age, can find almost any kind of information that they want. And so the ability to get that information and learn even from your podcast that you can create wealth and take the action necessary to create that wealth is unprecedented. This has never happened in the history of humanity. Yeah. So no excuse today not to be, financially independent.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I mean, there's so few kids that would take go buy a cassette tape, right? Tony Robbins, spend the time to learn it, get motivated, build up enough cash, because obviously I had to have some amount of cash in order to qualify to buy that townhome, and then to take action on it. And today, there's so much information. I mean, you can download this podcast. Keeps telling my kids, my oldest is 14, which is, it's funny that you said that's when you started looking into this. I'm trying to feed her as much information. I've got her playing Robert Kiyosaki's game Cash Flow. And it's like trying to feed her information. We're teaching her economics at this very moment, actually. And And I think about, the opportunities that are around for these 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds. I mean, we've got an intern that's 20 and we're teaching him some real estate type stuff. Well, I mean, but what you observed, I guess, very similar to us, because Joey and I, we grew up very modest families as well. It sounds like by seeing that, observing that and going, man, I don't necessarily want to have to struggle. I don't want to have to be relying upon another job, is what motivated you. So what do you think's keeping other 18-year-olds from being able to do that same exact thing with all the technology that exists?
I think it's one or two things. One is their environment, and a lot of that has to do with their parents. If their parents didn't grow up being, involved in investing or in a business, like they don't have parents that were entrepreneurs and ran a business, they don't understand that environment. They have to learn it from either their friends or stumble across it, or just be highly motivated and want to pursue it on their own. That's really the big thing. Ignorance, and I don't say that, in a very negative way, but ignorance is very common. And I like to say that ignorance is blank to audiences when I speak to them. And most of the time they say, well, ignorance is bliss. And I'm going, well, yeah, that's what you heard, just like everything else you've come to learn over the years that you've grown up. But the reality is ignorance is expensive.
Yeah, so expensive. Well, I mean, on your website, I was reading that you had a blog that was listing out the 10 real estate books that people should all go read in order to be able to be better learners. I mean, you have that, and people still don't take advantage of those resources that exist.
The greatest investment you can make is an investment in yourself. And this is what I did in my teens. And this is what people can easily do today, because there is so much free information on the internet with podcasts. Books are only 10 to 15 bucks a pop. There really is no excuse not to educate yourself. And the amount that you could learn from literally reading 2 to 3 to 4 books on any subject, whether it's infinite banking or real estate investing or whatever it may be, will make you smarter than 90% of the other people out there that know little to nothing about that topic.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you may have been considering when you're talking about what's holding people back is that we have almost been trained to do the 9 to 5, like coming up through the ranks of schools nowadays. Even as we were growing up, you weren't trained to be entrepreneurial. You were trained to go to school, get 100. If you don't get 100, then you failed. And failure, as you know, and being an entrepreneur or business owner, like that's part of the process. Like that's almost part of the fun. Like you have to learn by doing. And I'm sure that as you were doing this yourself, that first house, you probably didn't do it perfectly, right? I mean, you probably learned some lessons along the way. Like, what were some of those?
Experience is the best teacher. And of course, you're going to learn all the time, no matter what you do along the way. Experience is a great teacher. You mentioned school, and I just want to touch on a point there. Thing is we can take this and go off in so many different directions. The thing with school is it's a remnant of the industrial age. It is not designed to educate you in terms of money and finance, and it's also not there to create business owners or entrepreneurs. It just doesn't exist. There are very few schools, if any, that teach that subject. I have chosen to homeschool my daughter, who is now 12, because I knew that she wasn't going to get the right education in the public school system. Even in charter schools and private schools, it's the same type of thing. So she can get that same kind of education faster with the resources available online and through other materials, plus give her that financial education that she wouldn't get in school. And so she is much brighter than a lot of her peers of the same age.
That's something we have in common. Joey and I, our family's homeschool as well, and we believe wholeheartedly in that. And that it is like, what are we teaching? I remember reading in one of Robert Kiyosaki's latest books, he was saying that at a very young age, a teacher was talking about stuff, and he said, "Well, when are we going to learn about money?" And they're like, "No, we don't teach about that." And so he went home and asked his dad, who was like the superintendent or whatever of the Hawaii school system, and he said, "Dad, how do I learn about money?" He said, "You're not going to learn about that at school." He says, "Why not?" He said, "That's not what they're there to teach you." He said, "If you want to learn about money, you need to go ask," and I forget his friend.
The rich dad?
Yeah, I forget whatever his friend's name was, but he said, "You need to go ask his dad." Well, why do I learn from him? Because he's a business owner. And that's what we should be learning from. We should be learning from entrepreneurs. We should be learning from business owners. And so hence the reason we're sitting here. We're learning from you because you're a real estate investor. And since 18, you've acquired a number of properties over the years. Tell me exactly how many rental properties that you've bought and sold over the years.
So if you fast forward to 2003, I had taken time off because I was starting multiple businesses over the years, many of which had failed or we wound down over time. One of the biggest ones was a company that was on its way to be publicly traded. And then the NASDAQ crashed in March 2000, and we had to wind that company down over the course of the next year. So I took some time off. I had enough passive income to sustain myself and my wife. And I decided in 2003 to get back into real estate as a professional investor, a full-time investor. But at the same time, what had happened is investors were coming to me asking for help, and I didn't want to be a coach or mentor at the time. So that's where the whole business was created. But in 2004, in a 9-month period, I acquired 84 units, mostly single-family homes. So there were single families, duplexes, fourplexes, and a few small apartments. But I was doing that. To a large degree, I was able to do that because credit was very loose and easy. I mean, the running joke was if you could fog a mirror, you could qualify for financing.
Oh, yeah. Joey was a king of approving those kind of apps. By the way, did I tell you he was in the mortgage industry for 11 years?
Yeah. I was that guy who was blindly handing out money to anybody that wanted it.
What were those applications called? The liar loans?
The liar loans, the no income, no asset.
Yeah.
Nina. We call those Ninas.
Yeah, we took that one step further. I'm sure you heard of the ninja loans.
No income, no job.
Yeah, no income, no asset, no job.
Yeah, that's not good.
That could be problematic.
So you acquired them very easily, low credit. You got 84, and that
you said in like a year.
9 months.
Wow. Okay, so you got to teach us. There's a lot to be learned in acquiring 84 properties in 9 months' time. What were some of those major takeaways?
Oh my gosh! Well, that's a 2-hour show in itself.
No worries. We got plenty of time. The person listening to is just riding down the road. I mean, just keep going, guy.
Well, here's one of the biggest lessons. Here's one of the biggest takeaways. You have to remember, just to kind of set the stage, I was investing from over 2,000 miles away in Orange County, California, in states such as Florida, Georgia, and Michigan. And so I had to create systems in order to be able to invest from afar. And the two biggest things are, one, having the right team, critically important, and that's fundamental to what we do today. And number two is a lesson learned is to be market agnostic. Now, there's more to it than that. It's what I call my top-down approach. It's actually my 6th rule of my 10 rules of successful real estate investing. And that simply means you start with the market, and then you work your way down to the sub-markets, the neighborhoods, and then ultimately the property. What a lot of investors did in the past, and they still do today, is they get locked in or mesmerized and sold on a property. Here's the pro forma. The numbers look great. It's in great condition. What do you think? And that's all well and fine, but if I showed you a great property with good, attractive numbers on paper, and I took you to that property and you realize that, oh, geez, there's 3 burned out properties on that street and it's in the middle of a war zone neighborhood and it's high crime, would you still want that property? Probably not.
No.
So it's very important that you assess the fundamentals of that market and you look at its health and stability, and then you look at the markets within that market and the neighborhoods, and you determine, would you want to be in an A grade neighborhood, a B, a C grade neighborhood? Things play out, and these all affect the quality, the investment quality of that investment. So it's a big picture question that we can get into a lot of nitty gritty details on. But the point is I've learned that you need to have systems, you need to have the right team, and you certainly need to be market agnostic, but also choose your markets carefully because that will affect the performance of that property going forward.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about markets because, that's a very popular comment, right? Should I be investing here in my town because I know it, I can drive by and go see it, or I know the area, so I know I'm not in one of those, like you said, war zones? Or should I be very agnostic, willing to expand outside of that? So when you're talking to people that are nervous about investing outside of their knowledge area of their
market,
local regional area, what do you tell them?
Well, again, it starts with the team. You have to have the right team. That involves your acquisitions team, whether it's a real estate agent broker, a turnkey property provider like our company, a wholesaler, or whoever it may be. Then you've got, your property management company. That's another person on your team. Your asset protection attorney, your tax strategist or tax advisor, maybe your insurance agent, your local property inspector, on and on it goes. So that's your team. You need to work with them, and you have to have trust in them. So that's the starting point, is having the right team. When you're looking at markets, you want to determine the market that makes the most sense. And I'm giving you kind of a high level answer to this question. But generally speaking, you want to pick markets that have good, stable, good jobs, but a growing job market, meaning that you want ideally to see job growth. It doesn't have to be growing, but you have to have stability or job growth. You don't want a declining market, which leads to the second point. You want a market that has population growth, organic and net migration coming in from the outside. You don't want a declining market. If it's declining a little bit, that's okay, but you certainly don't want to see a long-term trend. And, Detroit comes to mind, where we've seen over decades, that happen.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to state the obvious here. I'm dumb. Okay. So how do I go out and find that information? Like, how do I find out, is my area growing, or is the area that I'm wanting to grow?
What's your resource for that?
I can watch any news channel and know that Detroit is declining or has been on the decline. Maybe they're actually growing back after the mass exodus. I don't know. But how do I know if the area in which I'm about to invest in is either growing or not, whether its job market is good or not? Is there some like websites, or is it just Google? How do I figure that stuff out?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you actually hit the nail on the head. The quickest and easiest way is to actually use a search engine like Google. Because if you type in Birmingham, Alabama job growth, you'll get a lot of articles that will cite sources to get that data from. That's the quickest and easiest way. There are websites that you can subscribe to and find that information. Some of them are free, like citydata.com, and there's others. Now, it might be a little bit dated, but just finding current news articles will actually cite the sources of that data. So that's the cheating way to do it, but it's fast, quick, and easy. But same thing, I can type in Birmingham, Alabama job growth, but Birmingham, Alabama population growth, Birmingham, Alabama, fill in the blank, right? And I'll pull a lot of great information that way.
So besides that, besides looking at the factors demographically, maybe in an area, how else do you evaluate a deal? I think, especially for somebody that is like a first-time investor, or maybe they're in their first few type deals, I think that's probably one of the things that keeps them from moving forward, is almost like this paralysis. Like, I don't know how to tell if this is a good deal. What would you tell that person?
So this goes back to the top-down approach, and someone who is kind of lacks the knowledge or the confidence really needs to start educating themselves, and then assemble the right team around them, and ask for help, look for the help. That question you just asked me can be answered very thoroughly over a long period of time, but here's kind of what to look for. You want to be, again, in the right market, right neighborhood. You want a property that is in good condition. There's no deferred maintenance. So you don't want a fixer-upper unless you're going to be an active real estate investor and you're going to be doing all the work, swinging the hammer, and fixing up that property. Our clients never want to do that. They want to be passive real estate investors.
Right.
Okay, so assuming you're looking at a property that's rent-ready or ideally turnkey, so there's no deferred maintenance, it's basically a performing cash flowing asset from day one or month one. What you need to do now is analyze the numbers on that property. To give you kind of a high-level answer to that question, whenever you look at a cash flow analysis or a pro forma, you essentially have your rental income, you deduct your expenses, which is typically the property taxes, the insurance, and your property management fees. Then you want to budget two things. These are what I call soft costs, but you want to count them as if they were being spent. One is your vacancy allowance, to make sure that you're budgeting for vacancies that happen every year or 2 years or 3 years. Second, you want to budget for maintenance and repairs, because you will have maintenance and repairs that happen from time to time. It's just, it's the way it works. What's left over is known as your net operating income. That is truly the cash flow from the property, as if you bought it all cash. Now, most people Prudent investors will use leverage. They finance their investment. So they'll put 20% down and borrow the rest, the other 80% from a lender. Smart thing to do. What's left over after you deduct that mortgage payment, that debt service, is your net cash flow. That's spendable money. It goes in straight to your pocket. I don't suggest you spend it, foolishly like a consumer does. I would save it, reinvest it. That number will show you a couple things. One, what is the cash flow? Two, it will also allow you to calculate what your cash on cash return is. Now, the beautiful thing about real estate is you can get cash on cash returns that are 7, 8, 9, 10% or more. In your market there in Birmingham, it's not uncommon if you buy right, to have cash on cash returns of 8 to 12%, sometimes more. But with real estate, it even gets better. And this is, really the answer to a different question. And that is, what are the other returns that I'm getting from that rental property? And that comes from the equity growth in that property. So it really is a long answer to the question of how do you analyze a property. But what you want to ideally see is that you have a cash on cash return that's at least 8%, ideally. The higher, the better. And that's really the starting point. And then you start to look at things like what will my equity look like as the years go by.
So as a real estate investor, like you said, you got to identify the market and be willing to be agnostic to the market that you're going to go in. You must develop a team, which that is a huge part. We keep talking about that. I mean, that's a big key to what we do. We team up with not only real estate people like yourself, but also tax strategists and CPAs and people that can add value to our clients' lives, because we know we play just a small part in that role. But then it goes into, all right, I start acquiring these properties. I need to make sure that I'm buying ones that are not going to, have all the renovations and repairs that have to be done in the next 2 years. But at some point, there's going to be an exit strategy. So for you, what is the exit strategy that you prefer, and how do you plan for that as time goes on?
The exit strategy is to continue to build your real estate portfolio to the point where you've reached your goals, whether they are income goals or equity goals or a combination of the two. I would never say that the exit strategy in real estate is to sell your property. Now, let me qualify that. There is a time and a place to sell your properties within your portfolio. For example, if I had, let's say, 5 single-family homes in a particular market, and I've come to the realization that I have enough equity in those properties that I could better utilize that equity, and that market has slowed down or topped off to the point where my research has shown me that there probably isn't a lot of room for growth in that market going forward, and I can take that equity and move it safely to another market, and I can do this tax-free, by the way, move that equity to another market and leverage up my portfolio. So now I have the same amount of equity, but I probably have more real estate because I've leveraged it up and I've increased my cash flow. That is a strategy that allows me to build on what I've been building. It allows me to magnify or accelerate what I've been able to do with my real estate. So you can call that an exit strategy, but it's not an exit strategy in the sense that I'm, quote unquote, exiting out of real estate. What I'm doing is I'm repositioning or rebalancing my real estate portfolio to maximize my returns. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's the way I'm answering it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, people are after the same thing that you're talking about, right? They want time freedom. They want the ability to be more passive and not be tied to a 9 to 5. But there may be something that they say, well, I'm not ready to do this in real estate. I don't, this turnkey idea or real estate in general scares me. So I'm just not going to do it. And they keep doing what they've always been doing. What is that failure that you want to help them to stay away from?
I would challenge any of your listeners at any time to have a conversation with me or my team about the fear of investing in real estate, even if it's local within a 1-hour radius of where you live, because often the fear comes out of lack of knowledge. And I call it ignorance, but really it's just you don't know what you don't know, and that often holds people back. And so I find that within a 10, 15-minute period talking to anybody, I can almost always convince them, not through force, but just through their own conclusions and just proper knowledge, that they cannot do better in terms of rates of return and cash flow in anything else other than real estate. There's only one exception to that, and I don't technically call that an investment, and that's really owning your own business. Owning your own business gives you maximum leverage more than anything else, but it also is the hardest thing to do and carries the highest amount of risk, because we all know that the failure rate with having a business is very, very high. Take business out of the equation. You can't do better than building a portfolio of prudent income-producing real estate. When you educate someone on how that works and the 5 ways that you profit from real estate, then they're always hard-pressed to ever find an asset class that does the same thing that real estate can.
Well, we agree 100% with those statements. We always say there's a handful of things that's been around since the beginning of time. Real estate is one of those. Businesses are one of those. I mean, the business that we're in, life insurance, has always been a one that goes all the way back. So we agree 100%. So let's talk about transformation, right? You said you started this at 18 years old based upon your pictures and everything. Had you not said that you had a cassette tape at age 14, then I would say, what are you, like 28 at this point? We know that you have to be much older than that. So how have you seen your life transform through owning real estate and those of the customers and people that you have been working with for a long period of time?
Well, I mean, this is kind of obvious, but real estate has been able to take me from what I call financial frustration to financial freedom. And it's not so much about the money as it is about the time. The fact that I can pick up and go, travel anywhere in the world, virtually any time with my family, and I homeschool my daughter. We homeschool our daughter, so we can educate her on the plane and anywhere we go. If we can just want to go to Paris tomorrow, we can pick up and go, and that's because those income-producing assets are generating cash flow while we sleep. So every month, we know we've got income coming in. So we have not only financial freedom, but time freedom. And ultimately, I think that's what people really want, is they want freedom in general, but they want the ability to do what they want, when they want, on their own terms, to fulfill their life dream, their life purpose. What is their mission? We're all put on this earth and we all have this great calling. Most of us don't ever find what that calling is, unfortunately. But for those of us who know what our purpose is, with you, maybe it's educating people on infinite banking and how to create wealth and preserve wealth and all that stuff. We talk about the exact same things literally on a daily basis. If that's our higher calling and our purpose, let's follow that. But we need to be able to set ourselves up to be able to do that. So how do you do that? You need to have a certain basis or foundation under you to support you so you can feed yourself and pay your bills. And that's what we're trying to help people do by creating that financial independence, and ultimately that leads to financial freedom, and that ultimately gives you that time freedom. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
No, you did. No, that's awesome. You're just like me. You get passionate about something, you start sharing, and about halfway through it, you go, what was I talking about again?
What was the question?
It was all good, though. That was the beauty
perfect.
of it. It was perfect. I relate to that, and most of those who are listening to you right now probably can say, yep, I've been there. All right, so as we start to finish up, I really appreciate you, Marco, sharing these nuggets, because this is what it's all about in our podcast, is to educate, is to teach people, is to create that passion for not only them, but for the 14-year-olds, for those, the 12-year-olds that are out there, that we want them to live and to pursue life maybe different than what we did at an early age. And not that my daughter has to be a business owner or a real estate investor or whatever, but I want her to have that ability. I want her to know that exists, because if we're creators, if we're producers, we will always have opportunity. It's the people who are worried about the economy right now are in the position of lack of control. And what real estate and business ownership and investing and things that you understand do for you is create control. So your company, Norada Real Estate, obviously you mentioned earlier creating a team. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can get in touch with you and learn more about you guys' company.
Yeah, so we've talked about team multiple times here and the importance of it. If you do your own research and due diligence, and you spend the time, you can assemble a rock star team for yourself and focus on the markets you want to invest in. Or if you want to shortcut that, you can tap into the resources that we've already put together for you, because we have long-term relationships with many people in the industry all around the country. These are people we not only vetted, but we work with on a daily basis. And so we have those resources available for people. And, you know, none of this is at any cost. Everything we provide is a value add service, meaning there's no charge to a client at any given time. So having said that, you know, if people want to learn more, we've got tons of free resources, articles, downloadable reports, our podcast, all that kind of stuff on our websites. Do you want me to share that with your audience?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
please.
Yeah, let them learn, because this is what this is about. I mean, they're obviously listening to you, and if they want to go out and seek you, I want you to be able to provide it, because if it's up to Joey and I to put it on something, we may forget.
Okay, sounds good. So the two websites are our property website is noradarealestate.com, Norada, noradarealestate.com. That's actually in the process of being rebuilt, and we'll have a brand new shiny website here in about a month. And then the other website, which is a little easier to remember, is simply titled passiverealestateinvesting.com. And it's actually the name of our podcast, and it's the name of our upcoming book, which will be out for free in about 2 months. And
Nice.
yeah, so passiverealestateinvesting.com. And anybody who signs up there for the newsletter will automatically get a notification when the book is released, so they can download their own free copy of it.
Well, and you know, as always, if you are listening to this and you're like, man, again, Joey has left us very lacking in the questions that he should have asked you, you have your opportunity, right? As a community member, you get access to ask Marco what you want in a live Q&A. And so if you have not already joined us, go to community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com and sign up so that you can ask the questions that are burning a hole in your pocket or your mind or whatever that may be. But go and join the community.
Your pocket sometimes is full of your mind, but for others will say their heads. Marco, it was a pleasure. We really appreciate the knowledge that you dropped on us today. And again, it is noradarealestate.com and passiverealestateinvesting.com. Go check out his podcast. Awesome information. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Well, I really appreciate your time, guys. And you know what? You guys were more awesome than I was led to believe. So thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.